Hi, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Joshing Around Milwaukee. My name is Josh Albrecht, and with me, as always, is...
Hey, it's Josh Albrecht.
That's right, Josh Albrecht, and we are very excited to have on today Milwaukee-born writer and historian John Gurda joining us. John, thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
So, John, the way that I like to start these things is getting to know you before we get to know the work you've done. So tell us kind of, as the author of many 23 books, including The Making of Milwaukee and Milwaukee, the City and Neighborhoods. Before we get into the series, kind of tell us your story, how you decided to do these, how you said, you know what, this is what I think is the path for me to become an author and go down this road.
And I'm jumping in because I love Josh always starts every episode this way, so we can learn about the person. But there's nothing more exciting to me than saying to a historian, "Tell us your history."
Okay. There you go.
You're inviting length.
Yeah.
Where do I begin?
Yes.
I like Josh and Josh too. I was on a TV show called Around the Corner with John McGivern for 9 years. I was the bike riding guy. And so John and John, the producer, always said, "John and John, two Johns, no waiting."
Nice.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love that. So tell us just a little bit about yourself and when you decided, you know, this is what I want to do.
Born in Milwaukee, Polish South Side, and went to Boston College, English major. Always liked writing. Always liked reading, then writing. They're very closely related. Came back to town after college and worked for 3 years at a place called Journey House, which is now a very sophisticated and large kind of social service agency. Back then it was a small, hand-to-mouth kind of a youth center on 16th, Cesar Chavez in Greenfield, a little bit north of Greenfield. And we were really in need of funds, so two of us wrote a case statement, and you describe why your services are needed, and that gets into history. You know, the neighborhood was stable, working class, and became somewhat destabilized, a lot of disinvestment. So the two of us decided to do a study, and for some reason unknown to me, I drew the historical portion, talked about the history of the South Side. And it was my neighborhood. You know, my grandparents had a hardware store on Lincoln Avenue for 50 years, 32nd and Lincoln. So I was interviewing people, and they'd been to the hardware store and bought their paper airplanes there, also had airplanes there. So all of a sudden, all these story lines kind of converge, and it was my story. You know, so the neighborhood story, the city story, the Wisconsin story, and it all kind of in one of those light bulbs on top of your head. I said, this is cool. And so we wrote a very primitive document, got published, led to something else, that led to something else, led to something else. Was out for about 6 years and realized I didn't know what I was doing with an English major. So I went to UWM and got a master's in cultural geography, did my thesis on Jones Island, which is a fascinating piece of real estate in Milwaukee. And one thing led to another, and that's 54 years ago. So it's been some choice, some accident, some instinct, some luck. So I feel surprised and privileged to be able to do this freelance all these years.
Yeah, and so many great stories that I'm sure you've uncovered. I'm interested in the luck one. Is there a story that immediately I was like, ooh, what's a lucky story that you discovered? You're just like, whoa, that came out of nowhere.
Oh, there's a bunch of them. The first thing about freelancing, and I've said that if I were to write a memoir today, it would be 54 years of 1099s. And that's literally true.
Yeah.
I haven't had a real job since 1972.
Wow.
So one thing does not always lead to another, but I was part of a UWM project back in the early mid-'70s, and late 70s by then, and wrote a couple of books on neighborhoods, Bayview and the West End. And the head of our advisory committee was a guy named Ralph Harkness, who was an executive with Northwestern Mutual. They have a habit of writing a history of their company every 25 years. He'd had an author lined up who decided, for some reason, backed out. He liked what I'd done with the neighborhood books and said, "Would you like to write a history of Northwestern Mutual?" I'm a 60s kid. No, this is the establishment.
Sure.
As buttoned down as you can get in Milwaukee. But I had two kids and no other means of support. So not knowing how term insurance differed from permanent insurance, I had no idea how these things were different. I said yes, and it turned out to be fascinating.
Yeah.
It was like a neighborhood.
So you did all the research and the history. Do you understand the difference now between those term insurances? Because I'm not sure if I still do.
I don't.
Term is you rent your insurance, and whole life is you buy your insurance.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
That's kind of,
I'm also not
That's
sure
the
that
main
I'm going to
difference.
remember that.
Yeah, you will.
That's-
You'll be like,
yeah.
I learned. Yeah, man.
guys
John,
have
John Gurda educated me on life insurance today.
I don't know.
and-
It came up something.
you guys have different jobs, so you don't need to know those life
That's
insurance
right.
Well,
particulars.
for now,
Uh,
probably
so-
should.
So 20. I'm looking on your website right now, which is great, johngurda.com, and I see 23 books. I knew you had a lot of books. I don't know if I knew it was 23. Is it still 23, or is it more
Yeah,
now?
no, I think it'll probably plateau there for some time.
Yeah.
Maybe the duration.
Yeah, so 23 books is a lot of history. And as you've done the research from all walks of life, all neighborhoods, all different storytelling in the city, I really find it interesting so you've written some of these books years ago now, right? You're mentioning the one you just wrote.
Yeah, some of the 20th century.
Yeah, so like now you're as a historian who is writing about the history that you've lived, like what is that like? Is that going from only getting your source from secondhand to now also being a source yourself? Like how does that evolution go as a historian?
I guess you just accumulate, like as we all do, experiences, insights, battle scars, whatever as we move on.
Yeah.
So I read some of the stuff I wrote back in the 70s, and it's somewhat antique. Cities have changed.
Yeah.
And what I've always accepted and in many ways celebrated is there is no such thing as a neighborhood that just stays the same all the time. It doesn't. They're all changing neighborhoods, and cities change by their very nature. So I'm just fine, kind of looking back at where I kind of planted a flag. It was, say, the Making of Milwaukee book back in 1999, and now we're talking about a 5th edition, 27 years out, and it'll be probably maybe 2 years from now, something like that.
Oh, wow.
And things happen, ranging from COVID, all the political turmoil we're in. So I'll reflect that. But the basic story, kind of the foundations they're the same. They're the same. Interpretations change, but the foundations are have not changed basically. So when I look back, I see myself as we're all witnesses to history, and the more years you accumulate, the greater a body of witnessing you've done.
Yeah.
But the job is still the same. You're still trying to tell the story as the story changes.
Josh, what's your birthday? You were born here in Milwaukee, right?
Yeah.
What year?
1990.
All right, so
Yeah.
we need the biography of Josh Albrecht.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
a very short book. It's that one's probably in the children's section.
A young
where
man
you
born and
find-
raised in
Yeah,
Milwaukee.
where you
maybe
find it.
maybe
And then it gets in,
a graphic novel.
True. And then we get in chapter 2 is about short-term, long-term insurance plans and
Yeah.
life insurance. No, I'm very excited to talk about the Making of Milwaukee, and you just talked about upcoming editions of that as well. I want to get into some of the stories of that specific book and just the stories that you've gotten to learn and share in Milwaukee over your time. We're going to get to that when we come back on Joshing Around Milwaukee. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to Joshing Around Milwaukee. We're having an awesome time with our guest today, Milwaukee-born writer and historian, John Gurda. John, thanks again so much for being here. The Making of Milwaukee, you just said the editions. How many editions since the original?
We're in the 4th and thinking about a 5th.
In the 4th, thinking about a 5th, and it's outstanding because, as you just said, nothing stays the same when you're talking about a city, a neighborhood. It's constantly evolving. But the first one came out in 1999.
Right.
Kind of tell us about what you all put together to that point. And did you have the thought when you put the first one together of, like, the next day, oh, this needs to be in there because it
Sure.
changes so fast?
Sure. By 1999, that book actually took 4 years to write, so I began it back in about 1995. And by that time, I'd been doing this kind of work for close to 20 years, and I felt like I had enough pieces that I needed. I felt obligated to make the puzzle, so I had the edges.
Sure.
And it turned out there were a whole lot of pieces missing, So I learned a lot, everything from churches to businesses to neighborhoods to ethnic groups. but there's a wider landscape than that. So it was a matter of kind of spending 4 years kind of digging into both the archives and the landscape and doing some interviewing as well. I've done a lot of that over the years and kind of coming to terms with where we'd been and how we'd changed and trying to tell that story. And early on, I thought I was writing the history of Milwaukee and realized by the time I was done that I was writing a history of Milwaukee, only applicable in many ways to this time, to this generation. So if only by default, no one else had done it, something that long. There'd not been a book that long about Milwaukee's history since 1948. So if only by default, it's become sort of the standard history. And someone else will do this, in 20 or 30 or 40 years, and that's just fine. Every generation kind of has its own voice. And I think it's been a privilege to have been. That book has sold about 30,000 copies, which is doing really well for a local title. So it's been a privilege to have been that widely read. And I have a lot of respect for academics. I'm not an academic. I'm more in that twilight zone between scholarship and journalism. You got to tell the story accurately, but it's still a story.
Sure. So as you've gone through, what has been kind of one of the biggest changes you've seen, right, as the person that is kind of putting those pieces together? What's been the biggest piece that was new to the puzzle?
A real change in what had been Milwaukee's traditional image and self-image. In the dust jacket for the first edition back in 1999, I said that Milwaukee was a lot of B words: bingo, bowling, babushkas, ballet. Blue collar was the big one. Beer, another one. That's no longer true. We're no longer the manufacturing mainstay that we had been for generations. Our last brewery is Molson Coors, the maker of Miller. A lot of nice, very good craft brews, but we're no longer America's beer capital. And you certainly have kind of the European ethnicity is still present, but Milwaukee is now a majority-minority city, so there's been demographic change, there's been cultural change, there's been economic change. And again, cities don't sit still. So that has brought certainly challenges, but at the same time, there's a liveliness here and a diversity that did not exist early on.
Yeah, that's incredible. So when you are putting this together, kind of going back to what I was asking before, at what point do you go, all right, now we have enough to do that next edition? Because if I was in your shoes, and that would be terrible for everyone, but if I was and I was writing this, I feel like within a month I would be like, oh, these 7 things just happened in the city. I need to update the book. And you can't, right? You need to you need to wait, obviously, and compile. And so how does that process work?
Now, you have to have a podcast if you want to do it.
That's great. That's a great idea.
If you want to really be up to date.
That's really good. Yeah, that's a good point. Might think about that.
I would actually that brings up a question I wanted to ask you about the changing of media over the years as a historian, right? So in the past, a lot of the research was probably done through local newspaper articles and archiving, but that is becoming less and less, and it's going more audio, more video, more social media.
Absolutely.
And the history is our history in real time is captured in a much different way.
Absolutely.
Than when you started. How do you keep up with that evolution of historical markers?
We are in a cuspy period right now.
Yeah.
We are neither analog nor digital. We're someplace in between. So when I began this kind of work back in the 70s, there weren't laptop computers. There were not searchable databases. Nothing was digitized at all. So it was all paper records. So busted a lot of cuticles in the card catalog in the public library, County Historical Society, State Historical Society. And it was early on, it was hand taking notes. And then I graduated to a dot matrix printer, that you could feed with one of those early Mac Classic. And now, I've got a laptop I can take with me to access the information of the world, at my house, an office in my home. So it's been a radical change. And A lot. The Jones Island, the essay, the thesis I did back in '78 for my master's thesis, that was largely based on clippings that some dutiful persons, had assembled and very painstakingly cataloged over the years. Now that's searchable. You can go online and find databases and look up Jones Island and get, I don't know, 3,000-4,000 hits and track those down. Going back in newspapers digitized way back to 1837. So the game has changed, but the game has not changed completely. You can't. It's the old line of Wikipedia. You can't. That's not.
You can't fully trust it. Yeah,
right.
That ain't the Bible. That ain't the Bible.
Because I could go on there right now and change that the city was founded by Josh Albrecht, and
that's right.
It's going to live on there for a few days.
Yeah.
Until someone took you down.
Yeah.
Right, and then I would screenshot it, print it, and then it would be
it's
there. Be physical proof.
Yeah.
No, see, look.
Well, I was just telling my children that there was back in the day there was some world maps that had California as an island, but that was like that people took that as truth.
They also had sea serpents off the coast of
Yeah,
California.
exactly, and like these things that in history that for a period of time people believe it 100%, but then it's proven, it's debunked, it's found out. Are there any stories like that in Milwaukee where during your research it was like, well, actually, what we always thought was true, turns out this other thing is happening over here, and the story is about right, but here's the full context. Has that come to light ever for you in the research?
Things that were sort of turning legends on their heads.
Yeah.
Boy, nothing striking. Henry Meyer was mayor for 28 years, and people looked at him as sort of this paragon of virtue. He was actually purely status quo. He kept Milwaukee kind of in the same groove for 28 years. By which time, a lot of things had changed that he had not addressed. So in terms of myth busting, that sort of thing.
Right.
But in terms of the larger story, we were a world-class manufacturing center. We were the largest beer makers in the world, and we were a city of remarkable ethnic diversity. So there's a lot of the things that you kind of know instinctively, are still very much there. One thing that was kind of fun to explore was the relationship between Milwaukee and Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Chicagoans call us a little Chicago. Maybe we should call them a big Milwaukee. Perhaps. But I found a quote that it was featured in the Making of Milwaukee book. There is one thing we are deficient in here, that is the necessary blow and brag. And this is 1892.
Yeah.
And the next line was something like, Chicago. We are not Chicago, but not many cities are like Chicago. So we've been looking down at our feet in that sense for a very long time, because we're 90 miles away, and early on the two cities were neck and neck in terms of population because everybody came by boat. Milwaukee's closer, the East Coast, than Chicago is, and Chicago's got a pretty not a good harbor. It's a very less capacious than Milwaukee's and a lot swampier. But then the railroads came, and all of a sudden, all that traffic goes down to the foot, and now we're, kind of a bit more of a backwater. So that happened at this point 150 years ago, and it still has an impact.
Yeah, I love that.
On Milwaukee.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to give some updates on new projects, John, that you're working on, plus some information on how you can get all of John's 23 books. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Joshing Around Milwaukee. All right, everyone, welcome back to Joshing Around Milwaukee. We're having a great time with John Gurda, Milwaukee-born writer and historian. John, love talking about all of the different projects and the Making of Milwaukee specifically that you've worked on. What do you have that you're working on now?
One more recent one and one coming up. The more recent one, and this relates to Visit Milwaukee, about over a year ago, did a booklet called John Gurda's Milwaukee, which is a self-guided historical tour, 26 miles, and it'll take you half a day. You can do it up in chunks. So it's got full of maps and illustrations. So I'm getting too old to stand in the front of a bus and kind of rock around. So this is my way. Got to say, here, go do it yourself.
Sure.
And that's available from the County Historical Society. They're there on King Drive in Kilbourne. But the project I'm working on right now, not in the middle of, we're past the halfway point, is a documentary called The Making of Black Milwaukee. So The Making of Milwaukee, kind of a bit of a brand. Now, The Making of Black Milwaukee is talking about the African American history. And that grew out of a frustration that the audience for history tends to be largely white. I'd give talks that 99% white, and the city's 40% black. You need to have a broader lens, to kind of see the reality here. So I began to give talks at public libraries and Northside nonprofits, and people said, this is fine, talking about black history, but you leave and it goes away with you. So working with my production team for the Making of Milwaukee, Claudia Luz, Tony Wood, we're doing the documentary using a lot of AI, which has been really kind of a jaw dropper in terms of how you can tell that story. So that'll be out probably 2 hours long. It'll be out in fall. It'll be on PBS.
That's
Channel
fantastic.
10.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for that. And if people are looking for more information on your work or upcoming projects, they should go to
JohnGurda.com.
There we go. Absolutely love it.
Or if in doubt, just go to Boswell Books. I'm sure they're all available at Boswell.
They're all there. Historic Milwaukee Inc. has their gift shop over there on Broadway, Michigan. County Historical on King Drive in Kilbourne. So most of the books are there as well.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for joining us and for the stories. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's fun joshing around.
There we go. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Joshing Around. For more information for Joshing Around Milwaukee, go to visitmilwaukee.org. We'll see you next time. All right, everyone. Thanks again so much for watching this episode of Joshing Around Milwaukee. If you're seeing this part of the show, it's because you are watching or listening on one of Visit Milwaukee's social media channels, and we really do appreciate it. We're having a great time with John Gurda, Milwaukee-born writer and historian. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
This is the part of the show, however, where Josh asks his big question. Josh, take it away.
Yeah, there's all kinds of momentum in the city right now. And as you know, as a historian, you know there's been momentum in the city throughout history. There's always something bringing change, something bringing newness to the city. So we like to ask everybody, what's bringing them fresh city vibes right now? What's the thing that you're excited about?
Boy, a number of things. I'd start with Bronzeville and the area around King Drive and North Avenue, the old 3rd Street. King Drive's name was changed back in the 80s. That was pretty much a commercial ghost town back in the late 60s, early 70s, and that has come roaring back to life. Got the Black Holocaust Museum, got the Urban League there, the Bronzeville Center for the Arts is coming in on the northeast corner where the Home Savings Bank used to be. A lot of life and a lot of commerce as well. And that's one of the best preserved commercial corridors in Milwaukee. If you look at the second floor, you've got some really nice architecture. So that's exciting. A lot of stuff is happening up there. I like on the south side, from Bayview, you got Walker's Point nearer downtown, Bayview, kind of the southeast side. Harbor District, a lot of things happening there, a lot of buzz happening in that area. That's fun to watch. The beer gardens, I'm a biker, and the South Shore Beer Garden that's a cool place to hang out.
That's a great beer garden.
Yeah, it is.
Very family friendly, dog friendly.
Dog-friendly,
So
yeah.
people are using that, and I like that Milwaukee is becoming more and more a biking city. The biking lanes, some modest extensions of the Oak Leaf Trail, but we're lucky. In Bayview, you can go from near Walker's Point all the way down to Oak Creek, down to South Milwaukee, along one of the largest bodies of fresh water on the planet. That's not many people have that, so not many cities do.
Yeah.
So that's exciting, and I also like kind of the access Milwaukee has to nature. The park system is an enduring amenity that we have, and certainly we need to reinvest or to invest in a lot of the infrastructure that has been allowed, to kind of decay somewhat. But we got a world-class system, and most people are within 10 minutes walk of a park. So there's always a buzz, about the parks, and people love them. People use those.
The parks are amazing. I mean, several of them have beer gardens, as
Yep.
you mentioned, that really add to the flexibility. But a lot of people don't understand the history of them either. Of the history and legacy of the Olmsted being a part of building Lake Park and his influence on the city and design.
And the socialists.
Yeah.
Olmsted was hired by the socialists, to work on some of those designs. But Milwaukee has socialist mayors from most years from 1910 to 1960. And they believed in what they called public enterprise, and that meant public schools, public natatorium, public ports, and public libraries, and certainly public parks. So that's the legacy there is the guy named Charles B. Whitnell, who was a socialist planner. And he was kind of Milwaukee's Olmsted.
Nice.
So he's the guy who really had the blueprint for that system. And they named the biggest park for him.
Well deserved. Well, thank you, John. I can't wait to go to John Gurda Park. We got to get that one going next.
Be a real small one.
Yeah, still be my favorite part.
Okay.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you again so much for the time.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right, and thank you again so much for joining us for this episode of Joshing Around Milwaukee. As I mentioned before, if you're looking for more information or past episodes of Joshing Around, you can go to visitmilwaukee.org. We'll see you next time.
Two Joshes are better than one.